Hello, everybody. Welcome to Roundtable, coming to you live from Beijing. I'm your host, He Yang, joined by Lai Ming and Neela. Good as always to have you, our dear listeners, with us. We have some fascinating topics for discussion today and every day. On today's program, insiders of the advertising business are complaining that clients are asking for more and paying less. How are traditional advertising agencies coping with all the changes in today's world? And Roundtable's heart-to-heart segment coming your way. That's when we have a heart-to-heart with you, and we need to answer your voice questions on the live show. Also, if you send in an email question, that will do too. So if you want to pick our brains for a unique answer for a question that you are still wondering about, well, please send a voice document to ezfmroundtable@foxmail.com and be part of our live show. But first, on today's Roundtable, the year of 2019 appears to be a year of contraction for traditional advertising agencies. A new report found that companies are cutting their advertising budget, and the market for advertising has dipped to a 4-year low. One common complaint from advertising agencies is more work and less money from clients. So, well, a lot seems to be going on. Let's take a deeper look at what exactly is happening here with the advertising agencies.
Apparently, there are a few changes that's happening to the advertising industry, and one of them would be something that you mentioned earlier, the decline in terms of investment into advertising. According to a report on China's advertising industry by CTR, a market research company affiliated to China Central Television, China's advertising market dropped 8.8% in the first half of 2019 year-on-year, reaching the lowest point in the recent 4 years. Among the top 10 industries in advertising spending, 8 industries saw a decline as compared to the same period in 2018, when increase was saw in 8 out of the 10 top industries. And then data from third-party advertising technology company Miaozhen Systems showed that by October 31st, 2019, the internet advertising traffic fell by 11.5% year-on-year, showing the downward trend for the first time. In addition, according to a report on China's Digital Marketing Trend 2020, jointly released by marketing data technology company AdMaster, Miaozhen Systems, and GDMS, the average growth rate of advertisers' digital marketing budget in 2020 is 14%, compared with 17% in 2017, 18% in 2018, and 20% in 2019. The growth rate of the digital marketing budget slows down for the first time. Well, on this part of the figures that we see, I'm a little questionable about the accuracy of the prediction, because really we are only a few days into the year 2020. For them to have a figure as precise as 14%, I'm not sure how exactly they came up with this figure. But still, it's safe to say that overall the economy has somehow affected the performance of the advertising industry, and that's very natural when the clients are of the advertising industry are trying very hard to make a profit and also cut costs. Obviously, they are going to cut down on their advertising spending, that's for sure. But I think there are other reasons that would explain some of the challenges that the advertising industry are facing. I think above all is maybe there's a tendency where now that a lot of the clients are trying to cut down on their spending, they're turning their focus from the brand building to the aspect where they can get the most sales figures out of their spending. So there's tendency of that. I would like to go into much detail later on as during our discussion.
Very interesting, Lemmy, because you're kind of hitting the heart of this issue here. That is, ultimately, why do people even want advertising? I mean, why do businesses even want to put money in their advertising budget? It's ultimately about selling stuff, right? Why not just go directly to selling stuff if you can cut this middle part? And that could be what's going on. But anyhow, Neela, what do you think is going on at this moment with all these complaints from advertising agencies?
I think it's got to do a lot with brands, big companies now, especially realizing that when it comes to traditional advertising, it's no longer very appealing to especially the younger people who are now the biggest consumer base for a lot of these brands. And second of all, I think when you look at traditional advertising, it's got to do a lot with spending a lot of money, which is very expensive for a lot of companies, and especially now where there's a lot of competition between big established brands and small medium-sized companies, for example, and startups and stuff like that. And consumers now don't no longer just go for a product just because it's a big brand. They look for the unique selling aspect, something that's different. And when it comes to that, a consumer is not gonna go for looking for an advertisement. They're gonna go directly to the website or directly to the social media platform that these brands, or to discover even more brands. So I think companies are realizing that they don't really need to spend a lot of money to have people come to them. It's more about the message they send that is more important, especially to consumers today.
And the other thing that I mentioned earlier, the distinction between brand building and investment into promoting sales, I think this is a new concept that we are now growing used to, because previously I think when an advertising industry really started here in this country, that's when a lot of companies here in this country invested a lot in buying advertising on China Central Television. Previously, that was the only channel to reach the most audience across the country, and therefore a lot of companies, businesses benefited a lot tremendously from putting on advertisement on these channels. But over the years, we see the increase or the advent of more and more alternative platforms where people are concentrated, not least to say maybe short video streaming platforms that are very popular these days. So the traditional media obviously are being challenged in terms of how much advertising they can attract, obviously, and also that also means that people traditionally work in the advertising industry have to think about have to adapt to the changing landscape as well. Here, one example about some of the challenges facing the advertising industry is Focus Media, an elevator advertisement giant, saw its operating revenue drop by 19.6% in the first half of 2019 year-on-year. Its net profit decreased by 76.82% in the same period, and it resulted from the huge influence brought by the dropping investment from new economic brands. And this is a new concept. New economic brands, I look it up, and it seems that they include some digital economy or high-tech economy brands. So obviously changes are taking place in the advertising landscape. And elevator advertising giant obviously is not exactly well adapted to these changes, because when people step into elevators, they look at an advertising, obviously they get an idea of, oh, so this brand is making this kind of commodity, but where do I go to buy it? More often than not, they have to maybe go to a supermarket or maybe use their smartphones and do some online shopping. So the transfer rate of elevator advertisement is not as high as, say, if people were to put up an advertisement with one of these short video streaming platforms or live streaming platforms. I know that on Taobao's live streaming platforms, Li Jiaqi and Weiya, they are very good at selling commodities. So, and also Douyin and Kuaishou, TikTok, they are also working on introducing their own online shopping platforms where people could simply place orders as they see live streams or short videos. So that form of advertising obviously is more efficient than, let's say, the good old-fashioned way of putting on advertisements in an elevator. So some of the players in the advertising industry are going to feel the burn, while some other industries, they are going to make a lot of money, actually.
And just to add on that, I think also we have to look at the reasons why traditionally how advertisement was handled by companies compared to today's, because before, in the previous past, when we didn't have access to social media and technology and all of us have access to all of this information very easily these days. In the past, people depended on newspapers, magazines, and television, for example, because companies didn't have the choice, and that was the easiest and the cheapest, perhaps, way, and the most perhaps effective way of reaching masses of people at the same time. Without dividing or segmenting the markets. So for them, that was a much easier way. But now it's easier for companies to segment their audiences. Who do they want to reach? And for that, if you use maybe social media for them, it's easy to segment a market because they do collect data. So they use the metrics to be able to target their audiences very effectively. With TV advertisements, it was really hard to know even though the advertising could reach masses, for example, even in the newspapers, but what kind of effect did the companies have? Did these advertisements have? It was really hard for them to tell, and I think that's where I think for me now, advertisement could only work best for maybe new brands or new product. Like when a company is introducing a new brand, I think it's easier to spend money. And it's more effective to spend money to advertise using traditional media, because as an individual, perhaps, for example, if it's a car, also the audience that's more likely to buy a car are more likely the people who actually also pay attention to news. And these are people who still watch television, for example, or read newspapers. So in that case, I think a company might spend a little bit of money using traditional advertising, as well as using social media as a complementary way of advertising it. So I think when it comes to sort of increasing sales, traditional media and advertising doesn't really work anymore. But I think it also depends on, for example, a company would only want to spend money because the competitor is has a huge budget in traditional media, so they want to counter that. And if the competitor is doing nothing, then I will also do nothing, And so I think that's just the game that we're facing right now in the advertising world.
This is really interesting, because I kind of sense what you might be hinting at here is that maybe for traditional advertising agencies, they might be seeing this so-called demanding more, giving us less money but asking us to do more kind of situation. But actually, with advertising as a broader concept, it's basically been branched into more categories, and traditional advertising agencies might be facing a predicament of
catching up.
Yeah,
playing catch up.
And not doing very well in that regard, since there are so many different avenues for our attention span and to grab our eyeball time kind of thing, that they're also finding it kind of difficult to keep up.
I think there are two ways to explain some of the changes or some of the challenges that are facing the advertising industry. I think Long Jieqi, founder of Long, an independent innovation company, said an internet company recently required them to pitch with other advertising companies, and it seems the client requires the advertisement to reach 500 million audience and become a top 10 topic on Weibo's most searched topic ranking, only with a budget of 3 million yuan. I think one way to explain the difficulty is that the budget is very much smaller. I think that has to do with the fact that the economy is slowing down a little bit, and like we said earlier, the clients maybe are cutting down on their spending. But on the other hand, the clients could be very easily carried away by the impressive sales figures that comes with all of these very innovative and very effective advertising methods. For instance, like what I said earlier, short video streaming platforms or live streaming platforms. So these are the places where we see the most returns from investment in advertising. So I think naturally, I think a lot of people working in the advertising industry may sort of be able to identify with what I say here is the clients don't know what they want. when they are sort of cutting down on their budgets and still want something as effective as, let's say, 500 million audience and top 10 most loved, most seen topics on Weibo, they don't necessarily understand how it works in the advertising industry. They see somebody's getting this, they see somebody's getting that. Oh, we want both of them. We can you do it? If you can't, we find somebody else.
Well,
I think it's just the balance of power here. I think it tips towards. Does it tip towards? Yeah, it tips towards the companies, big companies now, because they, like we said, they have other formats, other avenues they can use to advertise. Whereas in the past, they didn't have access to social media, but now that power, the bargaining power has increased, so they can, it's either if you don't want to do it, I can give it to somebody else to do it. It's more like companies have realized advertising agencies are sort of going into like slowly fading away. It's almost sort of becoming obsolete in a way, and so it's more like it's an industry that's a bit desperate, and if you're a bit desperate, obviously other people will take advantage of you, and I think that's what's kind of happening. And in other cases, I don't think companies don't know what they want, but particularly, maybe they have an idea, they just maybe don't know how to describe it. So it's a job of an advertising company to come up with a good advertisement that can appeal to the masses. But at the same time, I think a lot of marketers these days in so many companies, they are very well informed. They've done a lot of research, so they actually do know a lot more, and that can come across as a little bit of companies being demanding to advertisers. In the past, it was more like you would put all your trust. Okay, we have a budget. Here you go. This is the product. Create an advertisement, and then they bring it to you. You like it or not, or you tweak something here and there. But now, with marketers very well informed, so they obviously will be more demanding.
Well, actually, I have a follow-up question about how to assess the effect of advertising, or I suppose this marketing activity that could go on for a bit for these companies. That is, now as advertising has evolved quite a bit, sometimes in this digital age, it's not necessarily about, okay, how many views that this particular video has been seen, but it's also, creating, if you've created buzz in the social media atmosphere, sphere. And I'm just wondering, although sometimes stuff gets discussed for the 24 hours of that day or less, and it seems like a lot of people are chiming in on social media, but does that actually transfer to conversion rates? I mean, is this thing actually being sold X amount more? And it's not necessarily sometimes, and also not, as we know, not all publicity is positive. Sometimes when it's negative publicity and people are saying, oh, I can't believe that happened with such and such brand, such and such person, or whatever, that gets talked a lot in social media pretty much every day. And I mean, being infamous, is that also... so is just publicity is the king here, and that's the goal for advertising?
Well, this brings us back to our earlier talking point about the distinction between brand building and pursuit of profit. Because I believe there's a distinction here, and companies obviously must have a different budget for each of the two different indexes. For brand building, I think I'll take Huawei as an example. We know it is a top tech firm here in this country. We know they are increasingly producing better smartphones, and we know that a lot of people who are growing sick and tired of Apple products, they are increasingly turning to Huawei. And in fact, the sense of patriotism here in this country is also promoting the brand of Huawei. So all of these come together to form the branding of Huawei. And obviously, the quality of these products and also a lot of the current affairs that's being reported add to the brand building of Huawei. But apparently, it's also understandable that the company itself would spend some kind of money to help it maintain its positioning in terms of branding, and therefore, so there's certain budget spent on that. But there's also, I suppose, the company would have another budget for promoting the sales of its specific products. Let's say Huawei is rolling out its new, let's say, P30 model smartphone, and it would make sense for them to spend a certain money at various locations online or with various advertising companies to promote their specific products. So increasingly, at least in this year, we are looking at clients paying more attention to spending that would spur sales rather than spending that would go into sustaining or promoting their brand. So some industry experts are saying that obviously this is a natural reaction to the general economic performance, but still it wouldn't make a lot of sense for companies to completely give up on spending on brand building, because otherwise, if let's say if Huawei couldn't keep it up in terms of its branding, people will change their perception about this company, and therefore its sales might be affected.
I think also it's all about also the power to sort of sway how much when it comes to advertising, the kind of message you're sending out there really, really matters these days. Whereas in the past, again, it used to be about, well, here's a product, go to the shop, buy it now. But now people want to hear a message. What's behind this brand? They look at the background of a company. What are their beliefs? What are their values? What is the company culture? How is the product manufactured? And I think that those are some of the questions that are, that cut through the noises for people who want to perhaps be a fan of or drop their allegiance to a particular brand. And I think if a brand can communicate the message of how the product is made, their quality, and giving an example of Huawei, I think a lot of Huawei's popularity these days, like you said, is because a lot of people, not just in China but around the world, are exhausted with the monopoly that Apple has been having, and now a lot of people are realizing I can get, if not a better phone, at a cheaper price, rather than going for Apple. Apple before used to be sort of like a status symbol, but people nowadays, everybody can own a really good cell phone from Huawei. It's no longer about the status symbol. It's all about what you can do on that particular device, and that's why Huawei is winning, not just in China but around the world. And so I think it's more than just advertising that people want. People want a proper message, something they can relate to. If you're talking about something like a company comes and talks about, they are a company that employs 70% women, for example, and it will appeal. It will appeal to somebody, even if you aren't paying attention to that advertisement. But that little figure there will make you pay attention. And if you were, let's say, we were talking about Pepsi versus Cola fan here. Then if you were a Cola fan and you realize Pepsi has, and you're a woman and it employs a lot of women, it will make you want to switch to that brand, So I think it's a lot of it, the advertising has to be there, yes, but it also has to carry a message to translate to people taking action.
Very interesting. And there are other complaints that come from the advertising agency. One being that today people don't have the patience for a good story anymore. And
yeah, right.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it has to do with the fact that perhaps currently the most popular advertising platforms, or the most popular platforms where people like to congregate, happen to be short video platforms and live streaming platforms, and it is not helping, and that people's attention span seems to be ever shortening, and therefore the traditional platforms where they air, let's say, long commercials, suddenly are not as popular as they used to be. I think that is just as simple as that.
It's almost like who's got the time to sit through another award? Who is
Yes.
Peiqi?
Yeah.
Remember that was really popular a couple of years ago. A really heartwarming, almost like a short film that went popular on WeChat.
Right.
Also a social media medium. But today, just a couple of years later, maybe people's viewing habits or the way that we get enticed has changed a bit.
And this reminds me, actually, last year, I think it must be last year, Chen Kexing, the Chinese director from Hong Kong, shot a commercial on iPhone and was very popular. It was about homecoming during the Spring Festival season. It was very touching. It reached a lot of people. I wonder whether he's doing something similar for Apple this year. So that would tell us something about the advertising industry.
Yes, very interesting as we continue to look at the different changes that are taking place here in China in various industries, and we'll keep you updated with all these interesting things happening in China. And you're listening to Roundtable. We'll be back with more discussion about making friends and an industry about it.
Informed opinion and heated debate. Find out what's got China talking and join us for your roundtable discussion.
You're listening to Roundtable with myself, He Yang, joined by Lai Ming and Neela. Coming up, where there is a will, there's usually a business. Willing to find a way, apparently. We'll discuss the burgeoning friend-making business in the U.S.
What kind of friend?
Totally innocent, Lai Ming.
BFFs.
Yeah, best
Okay.
friends forever. And there's a business that's built around that. What is it about? Well, you gotta listen to Roundtable to find out more about it. And Roundtable's Heart to Heart segment is what we'll present to you. That's when we answer your questions on the live show. If you have a question and want us to answer it or bring some inspiration to you, well, please send a voice memo to ezfmroundtable@foxmail.com, as we like to hear your voice, broadcast it out to the whole wide world, and answer it on the live show. And if you're listening to our show on demand, you can find us at Roundtable China on Apple Podcast and our 轻松调频 app. That's where you can check out all the previous shows and leave us a message, and we can write back to you. And now on Roundtable, as we continue our discussion. Making and keeping friends as an adult can be tough. Moving to a new city for a new job means the need to create a whole new social network. And work and family commitments can really cut into the time that might be spent getting to know new people. And not to mention how to keep that friendship alive. That takes maintenance as well. But is it hard enough that you will be able and willing to pay for help? Apparently in the U.S., some companies are betting on that we will pay up for this service called making friends. What exactly is going on here?
Well, what exactly is going on here is, well, there are a lot of individuals, services, or companies that are helping people make friends. That appears to be the case in the United States. So, in the example of an individual, Washington matchmaker Michelle Jacoby, she was in the dating business previously, and she found out there is a demand for among people for making friends with total strangers. And what she did was she find people whom she think was are compatible with each other, and she would arrange play dates for them essentially. And then there are also applications, mobile applications, dating apps. Bumble, Chappy, and The League have added friend mode. So you're not just looking for a romantic relationship with these applications. You are probably also looking for somebody to have a platonic relationship. And then there are Peanuts, which has more than 1 million users. Connect Moms. So because in some cases when young moms, they give birth to a small baby, more often than not, their friends, their existing friends, they are probably not on the same page, and therefore they have an incentive to find friends who share the common experience, and therefore Peanut is a application that helps them find each other. So, and then there's also a let's say more traditional way where companies arrange for shared working places for people. I think one way for them to sort of make some extra profit is to encourage people to make friends now that they are already together. So there are many ways and many people, many parties involved in this friend-making business.
Yeah.
Some of them are actually charging money. So, for instance, the Washington matchmaker Michelle Jacoby, well, she charges $720 and up for 3 platonic matches. So these things aren't exactly very cheap.
Yeah, it's like, you pay to find your Mr. Right, and now you can't pay to find the next best thing to Mr. Right that is a BFF. Do you like that idea, Neela?
I mean, I'm not against it. I mean, come on. If it's some people, they find it really hard. They don't know how to communicate or socialize or interact with strangers out there. I think this is helpful for people who perhaps see themselves more of as introverted. And if you have such services, perhaps it will encourage them to get out more and interact with fellow human beings. Because at the end of the day, a lot of introverts tend, because of the lack of social, they feel like they don't have that social skill. They feel the need to just stay at home, and sometimes it can get really lonely. So if it's helping, why not? I mean, I would personally perhaps use it if I was doing a solo travel. So if I'm traveling to a place I've never been to, I don't know anyone there, and maybe I'm there for a few days, and I would like to, just somebody to talk to about the city, to hang out, to have a drink with, then I would probably do it. But I don't think I would do this just to find a BFF. I would just do it for the sake of having somebody to talk with, have a conversation with over a meal, over a drink, because sometimes, you can have the confidence to go out in a nice restaurant and sit down and eat on your own, but sometimes you feel it's a bit awkward, because you want to avoid those kind of stares. So you rent a person. Why not?
Rent a friend.
Rent a friend.
And apparently there is an app that's called that name, and it just so self-explanatory, but also some people might be hesitant before downloading it. And there's one thing that seems to be implied here, Lai Ming. I'm curious to hear what you have to say about it. That is, it seems to be implied here that making friends can be really hard. Like Neela sees it obviously differently, because you're kind of just saying that, if you're an introvert, then you don't really interact with people as much, or have the confidence to do so, or have the skills, or whatever it is, then you don't make friends. But actually some other people are saying, hey, even if I am an extrovert, but it's still really difficult to make friends as an adult in this big city. What do you think?
Some would say the loneliest person in the world would be somebody that's employed, that's working in the business where they have to deal with strangers all the time, but still they don't have time to, let's say, talk to somebody in the hallway or in the middle of the night about touchy topics, that kind of thing. So yes, obviously it's harder for somebody than for others, apparently. But as somebody who don't have a lot of friends, I don't think it is very hard to make friends, because really, how many friends do you need? I only have 24 hours a day. I mean, I need to work, I need to take care of the family. There's only so much time I can spend on friends. And also, friends, yes, of course, they help you with your emotional need. They keep you company when you go out on a play date, that kind of thing. But they also weigh down on your schedule. And sometimes there are unexpected things happening just because you have this kind of relationship. And so be careful when you make friends. And it's not a big deal. I mean, don't take it for granted that friends are good things.
And also, it's also just a definition. What exactly is a friend? Who exactly is a friend? Because I think there's a lot of research out there that has studied how people relate to each other. And a lot of times, if you look at the people in your circle of friends, or a lot of those people are not friends. They're just people you know.
Yeah. Acquaintances.
They're just people, and a lot of us tend to confuse being co-workers with being friends. No, if you weren't working together, you wouldn't know each other, you wouldn't be friends. For me, a friend is somebody you meet randomly and instantly you connect. It's like a brother or a sister from another mother.
Wow, that's hard to find.
That's exactly, and that's why so many people struggle with that. And that's what I'm trying to say. It's even though we have friends, but they're not our friends. These people are just, they're convenient. It's like a convenience store. You use them when you need them.
Oh no! And if only you could see all the air quotation marks just went flying all over the room.
A true friend is somebody who's willing to drop whatever they were doing, to come and drive a car in traffic, to come and pick you up in the middle of the night because you're stuck at the Beijing South Station, to come and pick you up, wake you up. You get up, find a taxi, go pick them up. That's a friend. But how many of the people you know in your life right now can do that for you?
But you don't need that many friends like that. You only need a few.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Even if you do have one of that person in your circle right now, that is your friend.
Right.
The rest of them are just people you know. They wouldn't give up anything for nothing. They're just there to use you. I mean, it's more of an exchange of using each other. You use me, I use you. And then life goes on.
But isn't that
if I want to go out and have a meal, like, let me see. Hey, Yang, you want to have dinner today? But how often do you do that with this person?
This is my yoga friend. This is my badminton friend.
Yeah, exactly. Because you use each other for specific reasons. You have a yoga friend or a tennis friend because the only thing that connects you to this person is the sport.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but when it comes to other aspects of your life, you're not compatible at all, and that's what I'm saying. If you're compatible with somebody who's a true friend is someone who you would do anything the same way you would do anything for your family member. Mm-hmm. That to me is a friend, and that's why. And like Taeyang, you said, it's really difficult to find these kinds of people.
Yeah, and that's why some people say that ever since you, let's say, graduate from college or after you hit maybe 20, it's just really hard to find new friends because people become a little bit more complicated and you don't have that much of a shared memory prior that, and maybe there is this thinking of kind of being just practical of, I don't want to use the word like using each other, but there is an exchange of
using each other
of maintenance of some sort, and then it's just really hard to find someone that would almost give you that unconditional love kind of thing. But I mean, that also sounds a little bit too idealistic. Maybe for a lot of us who, just considering that probably in the future, most of us will live till 100 years old, and we will need more of that, emotional kind of input from other people of some sort. And so it's about, maybe you start with a practical reason of, we can go to yoga together,
yes.
Badminton, whatever it is. But then, it could possibly grow into something like more of a platonic, unconditional friendship kind of thing.
Like somebody whose funeral you would go to, that kind of friend.
No, you can go to anybody's funeral, even if you don't know them. I could walk across the street and go to the Babao Shan place for some random person. That's not mean I am their friend. I think the best way to define your friendship is how long distance. If you have a long distance friend that you keep in touch constantly, that's true friendship. Because it's easy to confuse somebody who's always around you and you see each other all the time. Or just because I see you all the time, now we are BFFs. No, your BFF to me is that's somebody who you met somewhere in another country, in another continent, and you've kept in touch, and you talk about a lot of little things in your life. If you're sad, you talk to this person. If you're happy, you talk to this person, and this person shares your joys, your happiness, is always there for you, even though physically they might not be there, but they're willing to listen, to call you, to find out if you're doing okay. That to me is a true friend.
That to me sounds like someone who has grown from just acquaintance to a step further.
Yes, something in between friendship and family.
And I kind of wonder, though, if the American users who have actually downloaded these apps or paid up to like $700 for this kind of service of being set up with a potential friend person, if they are even asking for something that is so divine. Maybe what it implies here is that this is ultimately about loneliness.
Yes.
It's a business about curing loneliness. And according to a 2018 Kaiser Family Foundation survey, 2 in 10 Americans report they often or always feel lonely. I find that to be fascinating. And in Beijing and big cities here in China, I would speculate that something similar is happening. It's on the one hand, you have a whole list of followers or whatever friends on social media, but those that can really have a connection with you from the heart or can actually meet you up in a coffee shop or somewhere like physically we can be in the same room is actually really hard. What do you think about, all this lonely business going on?
I think, for example, when you talk about like you can go in an app and find a BFF, I don't think people exactly want a BFF per se. It's more about they want that one. Maybe they have friends, like we said, in quotes, friends. A lot of people surround them, but at the end of the day, they realize, yes, I hang out with these people, but I'm never myself or whatever. Sometimes there's a disconnection, but they just want that one person who can. You don't necessarily need to go out and meet. You can go to their house. They can come to your house. You can sit together in the pajamas.
But what about
eat
before
McDonald's
that,
and not care about that? So they realize maybe, and also I think it could also be an effect they get, like an influence they get from watching too much TV. When you watch this TV series where you see BFFs hanging out, they're like, life partners, like soulmates, and you sit there and you feel happy when you're watching these 2 BFFs hang out, and then when that program ends, you realize, you go back to reality. You're like, oh, I wish I could have somebody like that.
And you remind me, sorry, Lai Ming, but
What?
Friends, just hold that thought for a second. Because what, Neela, you just described to us is pretty much, the whole 10 seasons of more than hundreds of episodes of Friends.
Yes.
Because in that show, it's a utopia. It's a Friends utopia. And in reality, it does not seem to be like that. It's like, remember Ross? He's this paleontologist, so he's like a very well-educated scientist. And in real life, do you think he would be that close to Joey, who's an actor who never gets employed until the later 2 seasons of the show?
I don't think so.
And also having such a spacious apartment in New York City and all that. But sorry, Lai Ming, you had something to say.
No, actually, I was thinking friends are overrated. I think, obviously, human beings have emotional needs. For instance, I have need for intellectually challenging conversations with anybody about anything. Could be Chinese Chinese philosophy, could be Chinese history, could be what's going on in the world, that kind of thing. I don't necessarily need a friend to fulfill that kind of need. I mean, certainly I'm lucky to have somebody in the form of my wife to fulfill that purpose. But
you don't bombard her with intellectual conversations, even in bed, do you?
But it's safe to say.
You don't have to answer every question.
You sound like
I
you
hope
scheduled this conversation. Like, okay, it's now, darling, it's now. Let's talk about this Confucius sentence here.
Well, these kind of things, they happen spontaneously. It's not like you can make an appointment, and then things just naturally start. Like other things in marriage.
Okay. Every word he utters today is a trigger word. And Lai Ming, congratulations. I don't know how you managed it, but it happened to you guys. I mean, when Lai Ming says something, quoting Confucius, his lovely wife quotes Confucius. Yeah, that's the kind of people they are. But Lai Ming, also, you're really lucky, and I'm envious of you that because he has a family, a newborn, and that's taking up a lot of his attention. And for someone like me who's not settled down, I don't have
a BFF.
I do have a BFF,
Okay.
although bless her heart, she's in the U.S. now, and I feel extremely lonely without her since we can't have the pajama parties anymore. But yeah, I mean, people possibly have different levels of demands from friends at different point in their lifetime. And maybe for me, I would like to hire someone. I haven't gotten to that point yet, but I can understand there is more of that spiritual and emotional need because you don't have that one big person, one small person in your family that's providing you with that.
And if it's just a play date, I think here in China we have something similar. There's an app that's called Qiong. It's basically a affordable or a cheap travel agency, online travel agency. So they arrange people who share similar interest to, let's say, to go to a tour, let's say in some part of the world, in the US, in China, and they will come together, and a lot of them will share their skills. Some of them will do the homework as to how to go ahead with the travel. Others will provide the driving skills, that kind of thing. My cousin, who went to the United States during the time I was posted there, she actually joined one of this team, these Chongyou tour teams, on that application. So I think these kind of services, obviously, they've been available, and obviously they also serve specific purposes. But I don't think it's a wise idea to rely on these applications to find BFFs.
And I have to say, as much as I'm laughing at Lai Ming and saying like he likes somebody whom he can have an intellectual conversation with, I'm kind of similar like that. I mean, I've been in situations where I meet somebody, I really like this person, and I think we could be good friends. And the minute they start talking about shopping and shoes and going to do nails together, that literally their points drop from, if they were a 10, it will literally drop to a 3. And that means to me, I cannot be friends with this person because they will always be in my ears wanting to talk about nails and shoes and handbags and shopping. And those kinds of conversations don't really interest me. I'm interested with having somebody I can have a conversation with, someone I can talk about tech, I can talk about football, I can talk about any topic that I feel like I'm interested in. So I think in that sense, I think we're kind of similar there.
Well, I guess we could be friends.
Right,
without even referring to our boss.
Can I come over for a pajama party?
Well, I'll ask my wife.
All right.
See if she agrees.
Okay. I have nothing to add to this. Certainly, I just hope that all of us, if you have that emotional need and, wanting to meet someone, and then, I hope that mission gets accomplished.
And I think the most important part is a human connection. You don't really necessarily need a BFF.
Sure, for another discussion on a different day. And you're listening to Roundtable. Coming up next, Roundtable's Heart to Heart.
You ask.
We answer.
Roundtable, Heart to Heart.
This is the segment on Roundtable when we answer usually a voice question or a question from email today on Roundtable. So we've got something from Dickinson19, and here is his email question. Dear Roundtable, I am a mathematician and engineer by training. I've worked in the design and semiconductor industry for almost 10 years. I'm very good at it. 4 months ago, I have been promoted to design manager. It is both a great opportunity financially and professionally, but I have a confession to make, Roundtable. I am not good with people. the transition from individual contributor to manager has been very difficult. I need some help from you. How can I grow to fit my new job well? Thank you so much, Dickinson, for your question. And what do you have for him?
Well, I think, first of all, Dickinson, you have to figure out what you would like to do in 5 years. Do you still want to do the job that you've been assigned to, even after the promotion, or do you want to go back to the way you were before the promotion? That's a question you have to think about. And in my perspective, I think you have to challenge yourself. Obviously, human beings, we have the gene to challenge ourselves. Otherwise, we'll be content with throwing stones at animals and eat the raw carcasses. We wouldn't invent fire. We wouldn't invent a way to make use of fire. We wouldn't invent the wheel. We wouldn't invent new energy cars. So there's a tendency. We have the gene to go ahead and move on and to challenge ourselves. And therefore, even though you feel like at this point you don't necessarily have the skill sets to do what you want, remember, if you don't move on, you'll stay behind. And also the way to do it, and I think essentially the first thing is to remember, don't put labels on yourself. I used to do that a lot. I mean, growing up in a remote part of the country where English education was not exactly ideal, I had huge difficulties in speaking in English. I still do, but I managed to keep challenging myself to a point. I've always wanted to improve, and therefore I've never imagined myself to be able to speak in front of a microphone to a lot of people right here in the studio. And so I think the first thing is to remove the labels on yourself. Oftentimes it's the labels that's limiting you, that's challenging yourselves. And in fact, if you were to take, let's say, a management course, the first thing they teach you is to try and remove the labels about yourself and about people. Now here you're telling us that you have trouble socializing with people, but that's something you can change. And the first thing you can change is your perception. Friends can be made, and you can be very good at reaching out to people, and not everybody hates you.
Mm-hmm. Well, for me, Dickinson, you sound as if you are actually intimidated by your team members. Just remember, the fact that you were promoted, that says quite a lot. The reason why you were put in that management position is because, first of all, your company wants you to grow. They see something in you that's very special, and for them to want to see the special you, they saw a lot of qualities, good qualities you have, and they know that you you are in that position because you can do it. So I would say, like Lai Ming said, do not label yourself, and also don't judge yourself too harshly, because every woman, it doesn't matter, even people like Steve Jobs had their own weaknesses. They were not just standing there and addressing people because they were confident. No. Excuse me. So believe in yourself that you can do the job. And when it comes to people, just make your goals clear and communicate with your team. You can always try to have, talk to your teammates and talk to them about where areas you can improve as a manager and areas they think you're doing well. And in that way, you will grow and you'll be confident in yourself. All in all, good luck.
Yes, and I still want to say congratulations to Dickinson that, getting a promotion is great. And also, I appreciate you for trusting in us in sending in this question. And we all have plenty of new roles that we need to grow into as we get older, as we get more senior in our work. And considering nowadays people change their careers or jobs like 5 times in their lifetime, it's about continuous learning, and good luck with that. And that's it for today's roundtable. We'll see you next time.